Thank you for the introduction. And even since we decided to come together today, I've had a title change. And this is something I've been working on based on my goals. And I'm now the Chief Transformation and People Officer at Goodway Group. And so transformation is a big thing for us. We've transformed many, many times. And so it's just something that's in our DNA. So it felt appropriate that we have a focus on that from a role standpoint. So thank you for letting me be here. I do want to share today kind of what works and what doesn't. Along the way, I will share some learnings. And listening to the speakers before me just made me think of so many more things and things that we learned along the way of our journey, and it was very inspiring. So I'm excited to share our story as well, and I'll kind of weave in some of the things that they said. I'll start with who we are. And so we are a fourth generation 90-year-old marketing services company, and we excuse me, I do have some allergies today. And we have been remote, as you mentioned, since 2007. We have approximately 360 employees. And I mentioned that transformations in our DNA. We started out as a print company and then grew into a communications company. And then from there, we added marketing services. And then we went into full print services, including having a large print facility. And then in 2006, we transformed to a digital marketing services company. And then 2009, we specifically focused on programmatic, and we wanted to help regional agencies with their digital services. Today, we focus on advanced media strategy for digital marketing teams within regional agencies and for direct clients. So we're in the middle of kind of transforming again to go more direct to the clients. One of the things that I wanted to share that contributes to how we come together as an organization, and which means like really defines who we are, is coming together twice a year in person. And you'll see here this picture, and this is our team. We are at Deer Valley, Utah, one of our favorite places to go. But this is called our All Company Summit. And we do this twice a year under normal conditions. Last year, we had to do it virtually. But we have this time together to have fun and connect and work and learn. And it's a full week. Everybody's there. And it's one of those amazing times. And 6 months is about that time where you're starting to feel a little bit of the isolation or a little bit lonely or a little bit disconnected. And it's really like a shot of adrenaline when we come together like this. And throughout the year, our individual teams and functions usually come together themselves in a mini get together at least once a year. So I just wanted to share that because it's really important team. So, like many of you, we have a vision and purpose, but the foundation of our culture is our behaviors. We chose to focus on behaviors versus values because we feel like this gives a very specific picture of how we believe we need to show up for our team members and our clients. And to make this easy, we bucket into three groups. We have heart. We believe everything starts with heart. Smart. We have to focus on working smart. I use the word intentional a lot, and I think I've heard that from the two speakers before me, but we have to be very, very intentional with this new way of working. And so it takes a lot to do that, a lot of focus. And we believe that we are experts in our field, but to do that, we have to continuously learn and continuously apply our learnings to our new strategies. And grit, I will tell you, last year we had to apply a lot of grit, but that's just normal in our environment. It goes fast, and we're always trying to find a way to do things better. And so we are willing to do what it takes for our teams and clients. Here you'll see we have a total of 29 behaviors, and you can see a few from each area. The reason we see this as important is because when you're in a hybrid or fully remote organization, again, you have to be intentional. And this really paints a very, very, very clear picture for our employees. And we use these behaviors throughout many of our programs and practices, including performance management and recognition. So they're very important. You hear these often. I've actually already used a couple as I've been talking with you today. So where we work is around the US, and we do have a team in the UK. So as you see here, the darker the blue on the map, the more employees we have living and working in these states. As I mentioned, we are in the UK. We're working to build our global brand, and currently we have 360 employees. As I mentioned, we have probably close to 40 openings right now. We are really growing, and that's pretty exciting. Um, One other practice I wanted to share is we do have time where we come together as a community, and that's based more at a regional level. So, I'm here in Dallas, and we have about 40 to 50 people here. And so we'll come together about once a quarter and we'll meet up and work together or have a meal, or sometimes when there's a all hands meeting or something going on, we'll join together. And that just gives us a time to bond. One of the areas that we learned that didn't work well is in the beginning, we overcomplicated this. We tried to manage the community meetups from a very high level at an organization level versus a local level. And that was the key learning for us. We just overcomplicated it and we tried to make it happen at the same time. So now we have community managers and they manage when we get together, what we do, and all the communication around that. So that really allows us to kind of have a life of our own or culture of our own with our own community. And it's really just been something great. We also provide co-working spaces for our employees. So we do pay for that if they need to go work somewhere, have a change of scenery, or if they have something going on in their home, like construction or something. Maybe they just want to get away. But so we do offer that as well. And we have a lot of employees who are considered digital nomads. So they actually travel. They're living their best lives traveling with their significant other, pets, and they will just work from wherever they're at. So as we start talking about how we work, we really look at our operating system or our organization system as our DNA. It's unique to us and it's designed to help us develop and grow. When we look at making changes or improvements, we always go back to the system. We recognize that it's all connected and we use this as a guide to ensure that we're thinking through things to keep our system aligned and we focus on the highest leverage action to make the biggest impact. You see here we have leadership, strategy, clients, knowledge, information, workflow, and people. I think this is important to share because as you consider what your organization needs to look like now and in the future, you need to have a strategy and roadmap to guide you. What happened last year during COVID, in most cases, is a great example of hybrid and remote work, but it can be better. And in some cases, it was actually a exercise in survival. I've heard some horror stories out there, and especially when people find out how we work, and they're like, "I would never do that." And once I hear their practices, I agree with them. And so there's definitely better ways to do things. So now's the time to step back and really start with a clean canvas and design the organization that meets your goals with in alignment with your people and client experience. So for the remainder of our time together, I want to share a few of our practices that comes from a few of these key areas. Obviously, due to time, I'm not going to share all the areas or all of our practices, but I just picked a few that I feel like would be most important or impactful. And I want to start with leadership, which we just heard some wonderful things around leadership. And leadership is more difficult in the hybrid or remote world. It's more challenging in many cases. I've been a leader for over 20 years when I started here 5 years ago, it really took me back. I had to rethink how I did everything. It was very, very uncomfortable and I had to find new ways of connecting, and things that were easy for me before were very difficult. So it's okay. It is okay, but definitely lean into that learning agility and figure out, what you need to be successful. And it does strain your energy. I do have a personal coach. I also have a counselor for my mental wellness, and so I do understand that I need to put myself first and take care of me so I can take care of my people. But it's just key. One of the things that we didn't do well in the beginning is we hired people who didn't have the experience of hybrid or remote working. And during the time that we started, there wasn't a lot of people who had the experience, so that was kind of difficult. So what we realized is we have to show them the way. We have to be purposeful and intentional in sharing with them some best practices and what it means to be a leader here. And what they've always done before, well, probably not work this way. So that was a very key learning. So today we're very intentional on how we do this. And one of our practices is around leader assimilation. So when a new leader joins our company or is promoted and joins a team, we spend extra time working with and supporting both the team and the manager. Since there won't be in person, probably for a little bit of time, we feel like this really helps accelerate the transition of both building the relationships and helping them achieve the desired performance. So that's a very key practice. And then something else that we do as a leadership team is we have to make sure that we connect with our employees. And I will tell you, when we come together in person, we actually make it a almost a challenge to how many people we can connect with and see while we're there together. So we're always, challenging each other and sharing experiences and stories as we're connecting with our employees. But that's our main goal when we're in person. But when we're not in person, it's still so important for people to be seen and heard. And that was something that was a challenge and that we learned that we had to be intentional about. So and it has to be at all levels too. So of course we have skip levels, but we have a practice that we call leadership reach outs, and this is something very specific that we do. And we have a running list of employees on our wiki, which is something else we use, and we have details in there about the employees. So for all of my employees, I'll go out there and put notes, and then I'll tag somebody on my leadership team to go out and reach out to them. And if it's a priority, something's going on in their life, we'll tag that as well. And so we all have our reach outs that we do throughout the year. And after our call, we'll go and update the page with our notes and share this is what we learned, this is what's going on, these are the challenges. And sometimes there's actions from that. And we also gather data from that. But that helps us keep our pulse on what's going on in the org, but it also helps us build those connections and relationships with the employees that we just don't get because we're not in the hallway. One of the things that I personally do is I send out cards each Friday, and you see the cards here, and they're around our behaviors. Um, I listen throughout the week for things, signals from our employees. Do they have challenges? Are they struggling? Did they just buy a home? Do they lose a pet? What's going on in their life? And I will note those all week. And then on Friday, I have focus time where I write out personalized cards, and then I'll put those in the mail to those employees. And I just want to find many different ways where they feel like they're being heard and seen, since we're just not together. Another thing we do is town halls, and we do this once a quarter. And this is a time where we come together as a full organization to take questions live from our employees. Nothing's off the table as long as we're not calling out a specific employee. We do default to transparency. So this is a way to really know what's on the minds of our employees and to get the questions answered so that everybody hears the same message at the same time. We've learned that sitting at home or in their co-working space or wherever they're working, sometimes their mind can really start to create stories, or they put together different dots without proper context. And that creates chaos and confusion and fear and worry. So, this is one way that we can kind of make sure that we're really addressing the hard issues or the questions or the stories that are out there head on. I will tell you that this is one area that we've learned a lot. We learned that we either have to have a really good practice around how we're going to answer the questions or what questions are we going to answer. Um, we learned that we cannot not answer questions. So we have to make sure we have enough time. We've learned to record the sessions so that nobody feels left out. There's just a lot of things that we did not do well in the beginning that we've learned from over the years. On the screen here, you'll see the virtual version. We do this a lot. We have a platform, Verbella, that we use from time to time. We'll do that for some of our virtual summits. We'll do that for some team meetings or scavenger hunt, some fun. We'll go out there and play soccer sometimes. We have dance parties, but sometimes we'll bring together our town halls in a virtual setting on this platform so that, we just get off of Zoom for a little bit and just do something a little different. It's always fun to see how everybody's dresses up their character. And we also realize that the days go by fast and we often take things for granted. So each March, we celebrate Goodway Grateful Day. On this day, we find creative ways to show gratitude towards each other. It's just one more way to make a connection, and it's just so important. I can't stress the importance of connection when you're leading and you're not always together. The second thing is just briefly around strategy. And this is true for when you're together, but again, you have to be intentional. It's harder when you're not together. So keeping our employees motivated and headed in the same direction just takes a well thought out workflow and a way to track progress. So we do have a workflow and we share this with our employees so they understand like how do they participate? What are we doing? How do we decide our plan? Where are we headed? How does this work? And so we do share that and everybody knows that practice. But we also have a project management system that we use to help track our strategic initiatives and key projects. And we do keep this open to all employees so everyone can get real time updates. If someone has a question, they can just go on the project page and ask the question, and the project manager or the executive sponsor will reply and they can engage and get ideas or answer questions very quickly that way in the flow of work. One thing that didn't work well for us is update meetings. And in the beginning, we did this and it took long. There was huge gaps between the times we could update employees. So again, it created confusion, or they didn't know what was going on, or when we try to communicate from the top down, it just didn't work. We would lose some context. So we also realized that we overmeet, and to sit there for an hour and to get an update just wasn't helpful and actually takes away a lot of energy. So we try to be very intentional when we do meet and be aware of all of our practices. And when we can stay off Zoom and do things in a fun way, we will definitely take advantage of that. We also find that silos can take over when you're not in the office. So it is easy to put your head down and work, and focus just on your function. And something else we created as a practice is team leading teams concept. So this encourages teams to work together cross functionally and lead together to achieve goals. And this starts with our leadership team. So for our strategic initiatives, we co-lead those key pillars. And an example would be for culture. Everybody would assume that I'm going to lead that based on my role, but I actually co-lead that with my chief technology officer, and I actually let him lead a little bit more and show up and share more things, publicly, because it shows that culture is important, not just to me, but to everybody, and it's not my thing. And it also gives him a way to stretch and grow in an area that's not his expertise. Our bucket around people is a huge one, and I'm spending a lot of time here today just because they are the key part of our organization. We are people first, and we truly believe that if we take care of our people, then they're going to take care of our clients. And taking care of your people in a hybrid or remote world is just more difficult. And again, it takes intention, and you have to be purposeful with your actions and everything you do. And so I could spend hours on this topic. I do think that it's key here, and I encourage you to look at your employee experience. It's going to be different now as you move into hybrid and then maybe even to fully remote, and really focus in on what are the moments that really, really matter. They're going to look different. And you may have two different maps. You may have a map of experience for people who are in the office and a people experience map for those who are not. But for us, we focus on these four key areas to ensure we have programs and practices in each, and we build out these things to support our employees no matter where they're located. So you see here we have hire, inspire, admire, and retire. And just like I mentioned with leaders, when it comes to hiring, we had to look at our strategies and profiles and workflows and tools. It's different. When we first started back in 2007, we were really more hybrid in a way because we had our home office and we had a lot of people in that area work in that office and slowly transition to home. So every time we brought in more people or people were co-working, that's a different way to do things too if they have a co-working space. So we had to rethink that, like what if they're in a co-working space together, what if they're the home office? And then once we all went to our working from home model, we had to rethink all those things again. So I would encourage you to do that. One key learning is understanding what type of skills and behaviors are needed for your people. Um, that's something else that we learned. Obviously, we had people already in place when we went remote, and we had to focus on what do they need now. We didn't do that initially. We just went remote, and some people were hybrid. Some people were in office, some people weren't. And so we realized really quickly that that did not create a very a good model, and it created a lot of conflict. And so we had to manage that. So now we look for specific things when we're hiring people. We don't assume that they can work remotely or hybrid. A lot of people think, yes, I want to do that. I want to have more flexibility. I want to be home. I'm not a people person. I'll be okay. And that's not necessarily true. It is different. And so we look for certain things, and we often hear for people who think that they're going to be fine at home, I need more. And that more could be so many different things. So we've over the years we've learned to see like what makes you successful, what type of personality do you have, what type of behaviors work well as you see those twin behaviors. And we really have focused on the profile of the employee of what we need and to make sure that they're successful. And when they don't have the experience, what we can do to help support them. So I have found that for job roles that have a very specific, repeatable process, it's actually easier to have them work at home. Um, and what's interesting is what I found is most of those type of roles, leaders feel like they need to be in the seat so they can watch them. They actually trust them less in some cases, which is interesting. But when it comes to more autonomy or more critical thinking or collaboration, it can be very easy to get off track without boundaries and specific practices when you're home. So those are very important to help your employees. So knowing that onboarding is critical. We start out by reaching out to the employee early to ensure that they have all the tools they need to get started on their first day. That's very, very important. So they really feel like they're coming to work. And we include a full box of our Good Way swag, so they can have their t-shirts and sweatshirts and all the things that make them feel like they're part of our family. We also include a welcome guide, and this gives them so much information. We have found that a lot of people feel really a lot anxious around what does it look like, I'm not going in anywhere, so how does that feel? And so we try to give them as much information as we can up ahead of time, so that when they start with us they feel a lay of the land already, and they kind of know what's going on. So we also do send them or cover, we reimburse their office setup up to $500 when they first start. So we obviously supply the computer and the docking station, but if they want to have extra things in their office, like two screens or their headsets or things like that, we give them money to do that. And then every year we all get money to update our office as needed. And then we also cover the internet and the phone charges for all of our employees. Once the employee joins our team, just like the leader simulation, we want to assimilate that person to their team. So, realizing it may be 3 to 6 months before they meet in person. So we have to make sure the bonding and trust starts immediately. To do this, they go through a team play along with their team profile. You'll see here from Predictive Index, which is a practice that helps them discover their strengths as a team and talk about any potential blind spots now that they're all coming together. We encourage them to talk about how do we overcome challenges before they happen. So as we know, in times of high stress, sometimes our best selves don't come out. So we want them to be prepared while they're not in a stressful situation to understand either how they're going to show up or how they can work around that. And to help facilitate that, we actually have a role internally called the Team Success Partner. And this job is to support our teams in a way that creates high performing, healthy teams. And quarterly, this role really helps our teams come together and run a team health monitor. which will go into a deeper dive to measure the four areas listed on this slide: accountability, performance, cohesiveness, and trust. We realize that the health of the team is critical, and just like it's hard to make connections just in general with the org, imagine when you're not together and can't see each other all the time and you're having to work in unison. So they have to have trust. They have to have an understanding of what's going on and how they work and what's going on in their world that day to make sure we're taking care of the client. So they will do the measurement and go through the monitor. And then if there's any areas that they need to work on, they will then run a play. We have many plays, as we call them, that will help them work on certain things. So if they are struggling with maybe some of the handoffs, we have a workflow play, or there's communication plays, there's trust building plays. So they have a whole library of things that they can pull from, and either our team success partner can facilitate it for them, or they can facilitate it themselves. And finally, I want to touch on knowledge and information. This is another area that we did not do well in the beginning. When you're not working in the same space, documentation actually becomes more important. I've worked in organizations where we did have process documents and we had our manuals, or even maybe we had a repository online, but we used them, we trained on them, but it wasn't as important because we had each other. We could look at the person next to us and say, "Hey, do we do this? Do we do that?" And we can still do that here. We chat, we communicate often, but our employees are very, as I mentioned, highly driven and they take initiative. So they like to find a way. They like to find the information on themselves and do some self-learning. So we have to make sure our documentation is accurate, um, up to always easy to find and access, and that can be difficult as you grow. So we had to find a way for our employees to keep it updated easily, and we tried many practices over the years. One was what we called queue up, and this was where we started out quarterly, where we had a week where we said, okay, everybody, this is queue up, and is correlate, update practices. And so everybody would go in and update all of our best practice documents, all of our workflow documents, all, everything. And there was actually a checklist on the wiki, and every function or leader was responsible for a certain area. And it was good and it was a focus, but we realized it really, really took a lot of time and a lot of, you know, actually a lot of energy of our employees. And it took us away from our clients too. And in many cases, quarterly wasn't fast enough. And if we did it monthly, it just took more time. And so we realized that we needed to figure out a way to handle this in a more timely manner. And so 3 years ago, we decided to create a role that focuses on this more effectively. And so this person's responsible for ensuring that all of our best practices and knowledge sharing behind the wins in partnership with our internal comms manager is shared and up to date. And they also create practices around documenting the knowledge that all of our employees hold. So many times they have knowledge that's not in the workflow, it's not down anywhere. And so when we hear something or we see a win shared, this person will reach out to the employee and really kind of get the best out of them and make sure it's documented. And of course, then we recognize them as well. And this really helps us pivot faster. And when we need to move employees from different teams or if someone's promoted, having certain practices in place really, really helps that transition go smoothly. So when we looked at all the information and how much time it took to either have employees look for data or if they found wrong information, when we looked at all that data and the time and the mistakes that were made because of that, this is really a no-brainer to add this role. So we also know that our employees like to digest information in many different ways. And in a hybrid or remote world, I heard this a minute ago, I think from one of the speakers, communicate, communicate, communicate. And so we have to communicate in many different ways because our employees like to digest it in many different ways. So one of the things we have is the goods, and this is our bi-monthly newsletter that highlights important happenings across the company. And we have a council that comes together, and their job is to go gather the news and share the news with our employees. And they do a really, really great job. We also have a weekly drill, and this is released every Monday. It's a video with two employees who will highlight a behavior, cover any company wins, and celebrate anniversaries and birthdays for the week. And it's included in what we call our beacon that goes out Monday. And so everybody knows to look for that for all important information and then click on the link for the video. And then we have a weekly wrap up, and that's an email that goes out every Friday that highlights all the communication and important topics that were shared throughout the week. And just in case someone missed something, they know where to go. And a monthly financial update video also goes out monthly, and it features our CFO sharing financial health information. And this is not just information sharing, but it's also education because we want everybody to act like an owner.